Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Tristam Rossin, artist, illustrator, board game designer, and the founder of Bright Light Games. He has 2 titles signed with Skybound and has worked on over a dozen successfully funded Kickstarter projects and published games. Tristan's first self-published title, The Mariana Trench, is currently on Kickstarter, was funded in just 25 hours. Tristan, welcome to the binge. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It is great to have you on this podcast. I really do appreciate your time all the way from the UK. So it's quite late where you are right now. So hopefully we're not keeping you out of bed. I suspect with a campaign on the go, I'm sure you are glued to the computer for the next couple of weeks, I guess, eh?
Absolutely. Well, 10 o'clock at night is normally my glass of wine time as I'm winding down from the day and assessing what's been going on. So no, but it is fine. Yeah, I'm up all hours at the moment. So because obviously I'm dealing with America and around the world. It's the Kickstarter goes on. So yeah, not much sleep.
So right before we got on here, I checked the numbers. So I'm going to read these. I like to put these in Canadian dollars because they always sound so much bigger. But you can tell me what they are in pounds in a second. So you've reached so far $26,397 of a $17,221 goal with 737 backers and still 22 days to go. And you were chosen as a project we love by Kickstarter, which is huge.
Yeah, and quite a shock too. Yeah, it was completely made up with that. It's day one, and there it was. Project we love. So don't ask me how you get one. I have no idea.
No one does.
Yeah. No.
No one does.
I'm really glad it's there.
That's always the case. Yeah.
Absolutely. And over the moon with the funding time and how quickly it's gained momentum. Couldn't have wished for a better start, really. And you're right, Canadian dollars does sound far much better.
What was your goal in British pounds? What was it?
So £10,000. £10,000. Yeah.
And when you chose that as your goal, did you guys think, maybe if we get there, or did you have a good idea that you're probably going to hit the 10,000, or how'd you come up with that goal?
Well, based on pure economics of what was required to get it manufactured and across the threshold without making a financial loss. So that was the core behind it. And so we thought our first project, if we break even, then it's out there and we've made a start. We've made a small impact. So anything over and above that, there's a small amount of profit in there that will lead us into our next project and hopefully more games. So yeah, the idea was not to get into debt doing the Kickstarter. So that was our line in the sand.
So what was your background going into this? Have you always been an artist and illustrator? When did you start, and kind of how did you get into the whole illustration gig?
So I've been an artist, illustrator, and into marketing for the past 20 years, but not in board games. The vast majority of that time was in the educational space, which ironically translates really nicely into board games because it's all about visual interpretation of lesson plans and it's just basically getting information across in a very visual and appealing manner. So that works. 20 years background doing that, but then about 3 years ago I was made redundant, and I spent about a year just out in the wilderness doing freelancing. So one day I'd be doing flyers and logos and some corporate work, and the next day I'd be doing posters for bands and stuff like that. And my daughter came home with a board game that she'd been designing with my grandparents, her grandparents, and at the same time, I'd been illustrating a children's book on the side, thinking maybe one day I'll do a children's book. And the art was great, but I'm not a writer, so the story was pretty terrible. But this board game, she showed it me, and I thought, well, maybe this artwork I've been doing, I could translate that into a board game, and that's exactly what I did. And never looked back. It's been board games ever since.
So how many games have you been part of in total? Like, so including the Kickstarters as well as published versus just even personal passion projects. How many in total have you worked on?
Ooh, it's been a busy 3 years. So I've probably, I don't know the exact number. I'm probably close to 20 games. And out of those, I'd say 3/4 of those have already hit Kickstarter. Several in the shops. I've been very lucky. At the very start, I was picked up by 25th Century Games. Chad Elkins, the guy who runs that, saw the work I was doing and thought, I can get him on board. And since then, I had Floodgate Games come in. I did Cosmic Colonies for them and 3 Laws of Robotics and stuff. So yeah, there's a few in the shops, a few on Kickstarter, and a few waiting to come along. Every month or so, I get a prompt that it's hitting Kickstarter. So yeah, it's exciting times.
And how have you connected into these different games? Like, how do you meet these different developers and designers? Like, for instance, Relics, I can never say the name, Hahara. We had Joe Slack. I know, Joe. I'm like, Joe, I can't pronounce your game. Joe Slack was on the podcast with his solo game, which is super cool. Anybody should check it out. The artwork is fantastic. I didn't know you did the artwork on it until I was looking at your website. I was like, oh my God, he's got Joe's game on there. So how do you connect to these different designers and developers?
Well, it's all by happenstance. I don't go out courting these people, and this is the strange thing with it. But I'm heavily involved in the community at the same time. So one of the things I do, and I think hopefully brings a lot to people that work with me, is that I try and get the community involved in the artwork that I'm producing. And that works on 2 levels, because the communities that we're involved with, they've got a wealth of knowledge and experience. Even if that's not at a professional level, they love board games and they know what looks good. So I work very much on my own. I'm not part of a team. I'm just a bloke in it with a desk in his kitchen area, and that's where I work. So I need that feedback and that help. Especially the help to begin with several years back when I didn't have the board game experience. I court those groups with for information and help, and that comes to other publishers and people that are creating games, seeing what I'm doing, seeing that level of interaction, because that also translates into marketing as well, I suppose. People get to know about the game at a very early stage and feel invested in it because they've actually helped with it as well. So it works on 2 levels, and that's why these people have got in touch with me.
Yeah. And then your current designer you're working with, I believe his name is Thomas Leighton. So how did you connect with Thomas Leighton on the Mariana Trench?
So in January, New Year's Day, I was having that thought of I've taken the published routes. I do a lot of work for other people where which I hugely enjoy, but I'm designing other people's games and dreams. And I thought, well, I've tried all that, so maybe this is the year to develop a game I want to do and see what it's like to be a publisher and see how that evolves. It just seemed like the next progressive step. So I again used the forums and put a post out there where I basically said I'm thinking of developing a board game. I'm good at doing the art and the graphic design, so I'm looking for a game designer that would do a small pocket game with me. And Thomas was one of probably about 30 people that sent me their board game design, and the whole idea just sang to me. The idea of the Mariana Trench and all the sea creatures and everything was just it's magic to an illustrator and a designer. The whole thing, it just sang to me. So it was signed on the dotted line the day I saw it. That's over the moon with it.
So tell us about this game. So I've got, for people who are watching this live and are going to watch the YouTube video back, the artwork is obviously beautifully done. You're right. Thematically, you feel immersed, I think, in this game when you're right. It's a pocket game with cards, but the cards become the board. and you really have this neat kind of theme where you're diving to the depths of the lowest point of the ocean to discover, do some research, discover new creatures, and discover new things. So walk us through, how does this game work? How do you play this game?
Okay, so it's for 1 to 2 players, and like you said, the objective is to use your subs to go up and down this column of water as you descend into the Mariana Trench. And the objective is to try and get as many research points as you possibly can. So as you go down, once you reach your travel limit per go, so you can do 1,000 or 2,000 fathoms, and to begin with, and a fathom is a card. So you take 2,000 fathoms, for example, and then you flip the card, and that's what you're researching on that turn. So with that, you have a choice. You can choose to take the sea creature if you've got a big enough hole to take it, or alternatively, there are additional resources that you can use on your sub. So for example, you can increase the hold size, or you can increase your speed of the sub, or you can have a radar. So the radar allows you to look at the next time to look at the card either above or below where you are. So there's lots of little extras that you can add that add to your abilities as you go. But not only that, it's got a hidden depth to it. Excuse the pun. But the actual set collection, once you start to learn about the sets and what you're trying to find and what you're trying to collect, there's actually quite a bit of depth, and there can actually be a bit of subterfuge between the 2 players where you're thinking, well, I can steal that card and stop him from collecting the set, or stuff like that. So there's a lot of hidden depth to it as well, and that's what struck me. It's a small game, limited card size, but there's potentially a lot going on, and it goes on quickly. You can learn it in 5 minutes, but it can take quite a while to get down to the nuances of it, which is what I really like in a game personally.
So this is what I would call a gateway game, or a warm-up game. A lot of the reviewers that have done this, who have all absolutely loved the game, kind of describe it that way. They say this is a good, quick, casual game, or a gateway game. People that know me know these are the kind of games I absolutely love. Any kind of game that I can, crank through 3 or 4 different types of games in a particular game night is kind of my zone. Or if we're playing something heavier, I usually like to warm up with a gateway game, or quite frankly, at the end of the night, when people start kind of leaving and you have a couple stragglers hanging around that say, we got an extra, 40 minutes. Let's play. What do we got that we can play in 40 minutes? These are the kind of games I think fit very well. And it's interesting that it's a two-player game. So 1 to 2 players, which you don't see too many of those nowadays. Usually you're seeing games are going like 1 to 6 players or so forth. What led to the decision to go with just 2 players on this particular game?
Well, it's really all Thomas on that. I think the initial design was that, and you're right. Obviously, the more you can expand it to, the wider the audience you have. But it just seemed to sit so nicely with what it was. And when I was growing up, a big thing was, I don't know if you have it in the States, but a game called Top Trumps, where you have cards and they have a series of stats on it, and you read out one of the stats, and if you've got the highest stat, you collect their card. Sure. And it was just really, really cool, and a nice little mechanic that 2 people would play together. And I love the idea that this is something that you can put in your back pocket and go out for the day with a friend and go, hey, let's just have a game. let's have a coffee and a quick game, or it's something that you can take on holiday with you, or put in your backpack or something like that. So yeah, it didn't really concern me, the fact that it was 1 or 2 player, because it fits so well with the speed and size of it. It was something that was a little bit more personal as a game, rather than something to share with the world.
And now you have some stretch targets in there, which I think are to unlock some other creatures or some special kind of mythical creatures. Does everybody get that? So if you support the base level, do you get access to those extra cards? Yeah.
Yeah, that unlocked earlier today, actually, the Creatures from the Deep. That was our first stretch goal that unlocked a few hours ago. Yeah, so we're on to the next one, which is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Okay.
So what we're doing, we're switching out the submarines and the ship that come with the game, and we're turning those into full-blown 1800s Captain Nemo type steam submarines and what have you. And you can play those instead, and they have slightly different loadouts with the game. So it just switches up the mechanics slightly, and it's just a different way to play. But it's lovely thematically, because it's quite strange, because those 3 cards, just by changing them from the modern submarines to these 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea feel cards, completely changes the game. It just all of a sudden it feels very different. Same artwork, but very different in feel. It's good though.
So now shifting from being the illustrator on games to now the publisher, what kind of learning curve was that for you getting into production? Like, are these being produced in China, or how are you doing the production? And what were some of the things you had to kind of pull together on that end?
Okay, I don't think it's a curve. I think it's just like a vertical line that just goes like this. It's been pretty crazy, because I'm not naturally a business person. I'm more, marketing and the creative side and what have you. So it's been a learning curve, and I'm very grateful that I've got my wife, who we complement each other. She's the flip side of the coin, where she's works in accounts and is very good with numbers and stuff like this. So she's been helping me a lot with that. It's been a learning curve with that. At the moment, it looks like we're trying to source the game locally in the UK.
Okay.
And if the numbers marry up, we'll do that. But we've also had conversations with distributors and other publishers that want to get on board and get extra copies of the Trench delivered at the same time. So it may be that we have to split that with China and get some taken over across to the States, and we fulfill the European side from the UK and stuff like that. We don't know. It's kind of some of it's a little bit up in the air at the moment.
Sure.
But everything's in place. We just need to work out exactly what options are going to be used.
It's certainly when you start getting this kind of traction this early in your campaign, it forces you to kind of rethink some strategies, right? So you may have thought, oh, this is going to be a small campaign, and this is going to be manageable, and we'll be able to all self-contained. And then when you're 7 days in and you're this far ahead of your goal, and the curve seems to be very steep in terms of the growth on the pledges coming in. And then the viral aspect, and just the fact that it's a really cool looking game. I imagine you have to kind of pivot a bit and say, okay, whoa, we were looking at doing it, as you said, we're looking at doing it locally, but now we may have to do this a little bit different way, or we might have to kind of combine a couple different things. Have you reached out to some of your other colleagues? Like, you got obviously Skybound games that you have a relationship with, and Joe Slack and some of these other guys, and said, hey guys, I could use some advice. Like, one thing I see is the community seems to be pretty open across the board.
Yeah, so I've started doing that today, because anybody that does Kickstarters know that you've got this massive high the first 48 hours where it just seems to be skyrocketing, and then it levels out a little bit, and you're going, oh, it's okay. And then about 4 or 5 days in, you're going, what's happening here? It's like I'm making 1/20th of what I was making on day one. It's slowing down a bit.
Yeah.
So I'm having conversations with a few people I know about how to develop that and keep a degree of momentum going and what have you. And also, I'm working around the clock on new creatives for it, and working on those stretch goal illustrations now, so that I can share that. And so it's not just saying, here's what you've received so far. It's a case of, and here's a peek of what you can have if we get that extra few thousand in. Here's the new cards and stuff, which weren't all there. So I'm busy developing the game at the same time as trying to get it up and running and marketing it. Yeah.
What were some of the learnings you had? So you've obviously been part of a lot of Kickstarters, from the illustration side, but I'm sure you don't just hand them the artwork and kind of look the other way. I'm sure you paid close attention to some of these campaigns, right? Is there any learnings you were able to kind of carry over to say, wow, I got to make sure when I do my own game and I publish it myself, I got to make sure I do this and I got to make sure I do that. What are some of the things some of the learnings you carried over from some of these other campaigns?
I think it's a lot of it is all about the social. It's all about being honest with the community. And I've noticed that the games that I've worked on where it's been shared, and there's a real difference between sharing artwork, going, yo, this is the artwork, look at this, it's great, and going, we've done this, we've made these changes, and we're thinking about doing this, what's your opinion? Now that second way of doing it is gold, because what you're doing there is you're not just asking people the questions, you're actually getting them engaged in the game. And you'd be surprised at how many people would actually get involved and purchase the game because they turn around and say, see that red square in the corner? Well, I told them to make that red and not blue. And the thing is that it's not with any falseness in it. These are genuine questions that need answering anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm working by myself. So it's just a happy circumstance that's doing that promotes the game as well. And the projects that I've done that on historically with other clients are the ones that really do start to smash it out the park.
Yeah, it's a very symbiotic relationship, I think, with the audience, right? Where they're feeling like they're being heard and able to contribute, even in a small way, but able to contribute to, how that game comes together. Yet on the flip side, to me, I think some of the gold is when there's a little nugget of information that you never thought of that comes up in those discussions, and you're just like, I had one of these the other day. We're working on a game, and I was like, same thing. We're putting our artwork out and getting people involved along the way. And somebody came up with this idea, and it was so obvious. It was so obvious, but I never thought of it. And, then once it was there, it's like, wow, I can't believe I didn't think of it. We are absolutely doing that. So I think anytime an artist can engage the audience and get their input, it just contributes to making that much better of a game. And quite frankly, as you said, this is COVID time, man. You're in your office by yourself. Having that input and that feedback, I'm sure, is very valuable for you as well.
Oh, it keeps me sane. They're my sounding board, basically. And the other good thing with it is that a lot of these people don't pay lip service to you. It's you get people that enjoy your work and what have you, but there's a lot that'll go, this is a bad idea, this is terrible, what are you doing, this will never do well, and what have you. But they'll obviously offer the constructive feedback that goes alongside that and go,
sure,
do it this way, have you thought about that? And that to me is gold. I mean, the first game that I started doing, Pebble Rock, the reason why I was speaking to the communities is because I could do the artwork, but board games, I didn't have the faintest idea what I was doing. So it's by and large the community that got me to a point where I could get something published.
Now, this is one of the games that Skybound is publishing, I believe, right? Or that you've signed with Skybound on, was Pebble Rock?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that's just gone through. That was signed a couple of years ago, and we've just gone through our final phase of art edits and all the rule books and prepping everything for publication. And it's all been signed off and it's gone, and it should be hitting the shops in January. It's straight to retail, and I believe it's going into Walmart by mid-January. So super exciting.
It's got to be quite the feeling knowing that you'll be able to go into your local superstore and see a game that you illustrated right there on the shelf. That's got to be incredible.
Well, I'll have to get a flight over to America to do that, but yeah, I might do that. It'd be worth it just to pick up that copy.
Maybe they'll take some pictures of the shelf and send them to you.
Yeah.
So what's next on the plate for you? What's your next project after Mariana Trench is done? I'm sure this is gobbling up 99.9% of your time, but what else you have kind of on the docket? Is there something kind of coming as like the next phase after this?
Yeah. So there's a couple of projects that I'm involved with that are from publishers that I'm developing now. There's a really interesting one, a cool one called Snow Day that I'm helping to develop, and that's actually a Kickstarter that tried to launch a year ago and it wasn't going to hit the funding goal, so it was cancelled. And I had a chat with the guys there because I thought it was a really good concept, and I thought, well, if we rebrand, redo the artwork, this could be something quite special, because all the reviews were saying that the gameplay was really spot on. So so that's one of the projects. There's a couple more smaller projects I'm working on in the background. But then the next big thing is another game with Tom. He's got his next one signed with me, called Gardens and Hedges, which is a nice, fun, little 1-2 player game again. So we're going to try that, and I've got another bigger one that if the Trench funds well and gives me the funding to do it, I'm going to take a few months off and make sure that this new game comes out. But I'll give you more details on that as it comes.
I'll be looking for it. So it seems to be a lot of the games you've done so far seem to be very card-based in nature. Do you have any that you're working on that are more kind of like the classical board or things like that, or are you sticking kind of to that angle of more kind of card-based type games?
Yeah, I think we're going to stick with the card stuff. And I mean, this actually started out as a fear of Kickstarter. And I think when you do a Kickstarter, you have to look at your ability and what you're prepared to take on.
Sure.
So being a first-time person doing this, it felt very comfortable to do a small box game with low assets and small amount of cards, and it was all nice and easy, and you can stick it in an envelope and you can send it out, and there's not 50 different assets that need doing and specially making and constructing. So I like the idea of it being simple to make, but load it with the art, make the artwork stunning, and make that the selling point, but keep the actual thing simple. And that sits very comfortably with me. So I don't think I'm going to be one of these publishers that goes out and does the big, come on box with minis and what have you. I mean, who knows? It might at some point, but right now I'm quite comfortable with hitting the small box market.
Well, certainly with the success you've seen with with this game, you've certainly found your zone, right? Your zone of what works, and I'm sure there's going to be things like manufacturing experience is going to come out of this. There's going to be logistical experience coming out of this. So, coming with another game that follows that similar format will make the second round that much less taxing on you, I'm sure, than the first round, right? With that sharp learning curve. So sure. I can't wait to see where this game lands, the Mariana Trench. For anybody who wants to check this out on Kickstarter, please do go just literally search the Mariana Trench on Kickstarter. You can find the game. Of course, here on Board Game Binge, we'll put a link attached to this actual interview as well, so people can find it easily. Or if you go on boardgamebinge.com, likewise, you'll see the notes on this interview, and you'll see a link to the Kickstarter page. So, Tris, just want to say thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I really do appreciate it, and all the best of success to you. You take care.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great. Thank you.
All right, cheers. Ciao. This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply join the Facebook group Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.